Good evening. Molweni. Sanibonani. Dumelang. Goeienaand. It is an honor and a privilege to be the program director of this august occasion. My name is Muki Mweng. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Learning and Teaching at Nelson Mandela University. Mine is just to settle you down before we start with the proceedings. I am now going to call upon our safety briefing official to come forward for the safety briefing. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Xolisa Lubambo from the Health and Safety Department at the Nelson Mandela University. I'm going to quickly do the safety briefing for this venue. In case of an emergency, the alarm will be activated. Don't panic, be calm. We do have an emergency coordinator and also the protection services that will assist you. All our doors are exit doors. On top, there is a light that is red. You say exit. You use all those doors. You go outside. When you are outside, there is a stairs. You go down the stairs. The first door on your right, you turn on your right. You're going outside the building to the emergency assembly point. You wait there for the emergency coordinator to check inside that it's safe for you to come back. You don't come back to the venue until they indicate to you that it's safe to come back. Thank you.
You can clap hands for the safety briefing. Because I see that you are hesitating. Should I not? Ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you that we are here at the Robert Sobukwe Memorial Public Lecture, hosted by the Faculty of Education at Nelson Mandela University. This is an institutional public lecture that is hosted biannually. Without further ado, I am going to now ask the Faculty of Education Student Choir to come forward to entertain us. Over to our choir.
People No.
Another round of applause for our choir. These are the future teachers. Can you just imagine schools with teachers such as these? Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, it is now my privilege to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Sibongile Mutwa, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, VC.
I love the choir. They are special. This choir, this Faculty of Education choir is different. So let's give them. Thank you so much, Dr. Professor Mueng. Program Director, sure, it's full now. Program Director, Dr. Mueng, it is my pleasure to offer welcoming remarks at this important occasion, the biennial Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe Institutional Public Lecture at Nelson Mandela University. We recognize members of the Sobukwe family who might be present here, as well as the leadership of Pan Africanist Congress, Tata Sobukwe's party. I understand that it was going to be led by Honorable Mzwanele Nyonso, but Honorable Nyonso is not here. I understand he is on national duty, but we want to recognize the Minister and the President of the PAC in absentia. The President is also dealing with the land question. He is also the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform in our administration, in our government at the moment. So we would like to just honor him in his absence. We also want to recognize the Deputy President of the Pan Africanist Congress, Mr. Jackie Stone Siroke, who's going to be representing the President, and the SG, Mr. Apa Powe, this afternoon. I also recognize members of our University Council who might be watching online, the Deputy Vice Chancellors. I saw Professor Mueng, Professor Kiet, and I know that the other DVCs are participating online. And I want to recognize the deanery, the whole university executive, senior management. I've seen some deans here, but I want to single out Professor Heloise Satora, the executive dean of the Faculty of Education. This faculty, as we heard, is our host for this afternoon. Our staff members, Ngokubanzi, numerous friends of our university, our students led by the SRC, colleagues from our sister universities, leaders of all sectors of our society. I see traditional leaders here of the Khoi and the San, and other traditional leaders who might be here, which I have not seen. Also the members of our government, our business, our civil society, namukelekile nonke, we are an outside facing university. I would also like to welcome the learners that are here. I always smile when I see you, and the teachers from several high schools here in Gqeberha and Kariga who are attending this lecture. You grace us with your youth, so we welcome you. Thank you so much. I extend special appreciation to our keynote speaker this afternoon, Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo. He will shortly be introduced by the Executive Dean, Professor Satora, so I won't dwell on the credentials of the professor. I want to thank you, though, Prof, for agreeing to be our keynote speaker on such an important occasion for us. The title of your lecture is Positively Provocative, and we are looking forward to it with anticipation. A warm welcome is also extended by me to Professor Zethu Cakata, who has agreed to be our respondent this evening. We look forward to your insights this evening, Professor. The Nelson Mandela University Institutional Public Lecture Series is an important platform for us to engage and place a spotlight on issues of public interest. This Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe lecture is no exception. More than a century after his birth on the 5th of December 1924, and 48 years after his passing, his ideas still find considerable resonance in our society. We are therefore humbled, truly, and grateful as Nelson Mandela University that we are able to use public springboards such as this lecture series to continue to reflect on the life, contribution, and philosophy of Utata Wethu Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. This lecture takes place in the context of news that changing the name of Rafreinet to Robert Sobukwe Town has been officially gazetted. Thank you. This deserves a round of applause indeed. Thank you so much. We are excited. This is further testament to the life and contribution of one of South Africa's finest sons and confirmation of his contemporary and commanding relevance. When you read the story of Sobukwe, of course, if you are an academic and you live in the academic space, you become really sad about what he could have been had he not sacrificed his life for freedom. Even though it is disheartening, it should not surprise us that some of our compatriots, even nearly 5 decades after his death, have mounted a campaign to oppose this name change. This is witness to the lasting and liberating, but for some, an intimidating legacy of Sobukwe, one he built at the back of persecution and personal suffering he had to bear in his short lifetime. This public lecture, which is a biennial event, as our DVC has reminded us in our university calendar, resonates with our aspiration to be an engaged and transformative university. Through this lecture, we pause and reflect, yet again, on the teachings and meaning of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, and the promise this holds for a more just and fairer world, a struggle that we are still on. I want to thank the committee, the public lecture committee of the university for having pushed us over time to work with only the celebrated of our South Africans that we remember through these lectures. Reflecting on the life of Sobukwe, Benjamin Pogrand, I'm sure his work we have seen, he was a journalist himself. He focuses our minds on extraordinary courage and exemplary leadership of Sobukwe when he says, and I quote from his work, he says, he rose above it all. He was a giant. Those who tried to debase him were themselves debased. What he has given us is the example of his strength and courage in sticking to what he believed. He applied this to a superhuman extent. He asked people to do only what he himself was prepared to do. How many of us do that? He was the first to lead the way and to accept the consequences of what he did, and I close quote. We heard this when we walked in from the screen when his contemporaries were reflecting on his life, that he was a man that led from the front. In conclusion, because I'm not a keynote speaker, Prof. I want to say that, and we know this very well here at Mandela because we live here, our vision is to be a dynamic African university recognized for its leadership in generating cutting-edge knowledge for a sustainable future. That is our vision. We take courage from the teachings of Sobukwe and the pathfinders of our liberation. We hope that we can rise to Sobukwe's famous provocation when he said, as he addressed his contemporaries, Kano College, where I come from, at the University of Fort Hare in 1949, he said, "We breathe, we dream, we live Africa, because Africa and humanity are inseparable." That's what he said. With that thought, Program Director and honored guests, I would like to again warmly welcome you to this great institution. I look forward to, and we look forward to, a spirited and intellectually stimulating engagement. I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, VC, for that warm welcome. Now you can take off your jackets because Intloko Yekhaya has welcomed you. I want to acknowledge our guests who are watching online. And at this point, I want to reintroduce myself. I am from Robert Sobukwe town. It really sounds good, eh? Ooh. And really, born and bred there. I'm from there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to ask the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Heloise Satora, to introduce our keynote speaker.
It is really full, VC. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, VC, members of council, members of MANCO, our esteemed guests, Prof Kondlo, Prof Cakata, DVCs, executive deans and deputy deans, members of the executive committee of the PAC, the Deputy President and the Secretary General, traditional leaders, members of the Faculty of Education and other faculties at the university, visitors from other universities, students, teachers, and may I say alumni, and learners from our partner schools. ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is indeed an honor for me to introduce our keynote speaker, Prof Kwandiwe Kondlo, to you. We previously invited Prof Kondlo to do a presentation at one of our Robert Sobukwe lectures, and unfortunately, he was not able to make it due to ill health. We are thus delighted, Prof, to have you here this evening, and we look forward to listening to your presentation entitled Robert Sobukwe, Reading the Signs of Times, a Philosophical Postscript. Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo is a South African historian, public intellectual, and academic leader, known for his scholarship on African nationalism, liberation movements, and democratic transformation in South Africa. His work has made significant contributions to the story of the liberation struggle and to debates about governance, memory, and political identity in post-apartheid South Africa. Prof Kondlo is the former academic director of the Wits School of Governance. He is still attached to the Wits School of Governance as a full professor and teaches political economy of development to postgraduate students. Before joining Wits University, he was at the University of Johannesburg as a full professor of international political economy. Besides the positions already mentioned, his career journey also includes being a professor and director of the Center for Africa Studies at the University of the Free State. He was also the executive director of the Democracy and Governance Program of the Human Science Research Council and chief executive officer of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. This is where his outstanding institution turnaround skills were proven, as he managed to turn around and rebrand SACOB as SACI. Throughout his career, Prof Kondlo has supervised postgraduate students, delivered keynote lectures, and participated in national and international academic forums. Prof Kondlo has authored and edited numerous academic works on the broader South African liberation history. His teaching and mentorship have helped shape a generation of scholars in African history and political studies. He is regarded as one of the key historians of South Africa's liberation movement. His work has contributed to a deeper understanding of the complexities of anti-apartheid struggles and the evolving character of a democracy in South Africa. Through research, institutional leadership, and public engagement, he has played an important role in shaping both academic scholarship and broader debates about South Africa's past and future. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Kondlo to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. My special greetings, of course, go to the leadership of this university, Nelson Mandela University. I thank you for inviting me to come give this lecture. I also convey my greetings to leaders coming from various spheres of government, leaders of political parties, community organizations, leaders of student formations and students. Most importantly, I want to extend greetings to fellow academics who have managed to attend this function. I'm referring here to the intellectuals of this university, the people whom Václav Havel calls the vanquished in society. For they stand for truth based on research, and they are provocative by being independent. These are the people whom Robert Sobukwe admired most and wanted to identify with. Most importantly, I extend my warm greetings to members of the Sobukwe family who might be here. I also extend my warm greetings to leaders of the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania, the organization which Robert Sobukwe helped establish following the breakaway from the African National Congress in 1959. I am glad, ladies and gentlemen, that in 2011, I visited what was known as Grafreinet, now Sobukwe town. And I had the opportunity to meet Mama Veronica Sobukwe and her son, Dini Sobukwe. Still unbelievable that he's no more. There was just a lot to talk about during that short engagement, but time was not enough as I had to drive to Gqeberha and catch a flight back to Johannesburg. In this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make it clear, I am paying tribute to a great soul. I am paying tribute to the Son of Man, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. Despite reference to the philosophical postscript, which is in the title of the lecture, I have avoided, ladies and gentlemen, to pitch the lecture in purely academic terms. Yes, I've tried to use as simple a language as I can afford. Because after the lecture, we must be able to have a debate. We must be able to engage one another. But of course, it is important that I underline the fact that I'm speaking as an academic based at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. In other words, I'm not actually a party political activist, but I am an intellectual with a clear sense of history and a firm commitment to the realization of the emancipatory ideals of the liberation struggle. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not neutral. I don't want to even pretend to be neutral, especially given the context of our time. It is a context where the struggles between the haves and have-nots, between evil and righteousness, refuse to be over and done with. The lines drawn in the heat of these various struggles, from the very early struggles against slavery to the struggles against racist accumulation of today have never disappeared. They only faded and are now reappearing as part of race supremacist ideals that are on the rise and are seeking to challenge and overwhelm the global democratization project. Let me take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to acknowledge what I see as the growing body of academic research and book publications post-1994 on Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. I acknowledge that. And I'm very happy and very touched by that. I refer here to publications such as Darkest Before Dawn, Writings, Testimonies, and Correspondence from the Life of Robert Sobukwe, edited by Derek Hook and Leswin Lopsha. It was published in 2024, this book. Another book, Lie on Your Wounds, The Prison Correspondence of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, also by Derek Hook, published in 2019. Sobukwe, The Making of a Pan Africanist Leader, written by Tamika Plaki, published in 2019. One Race, The Legacy of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, published by Luvuyo Dondolo. The Struggle for Freedom of Azania Was Her Life, The Portrait of an African Woman, Veronica Sobukwe, by Professor Zide, Dodomzi Zide. There are numerous other publications, ladies and gentlemen, I won't go into, which also talk to Sobukwe's leadership role and his ideas, but of course, they are not biographies. I am currently working on an historiography of Sobukwe and the Pan Africanist Congress. I feel it is time now to do a comprehensive review of all the literature on Sobukwe and the Pan Africanist Congress. There's a need to have someone to review all the literature on Sobukwe and the Pan Africanist Congress. But what is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, what is interesting is that we are starting to hear, digest, and analyze Sobukwe's voice, but in literary forms. This I find very progressive. This I find very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I base today's lecture on a text from one of Sobukwe's letters to Benjamin Pogrund. Benjamin Pogrund was Sobukwe's friend. He was a journalist. This particular letter is dated 23rd of November, 1966. Sobukwe was still in Robben Island in 1966. One of the points Sobukwe makes in this letter is that, open quotations, the tragedy of our day is the inability of politicians to read the signs of times. One of the points Sobukwe is making in this letter is, I open quotations, the tragedy of our day is the inability of politicians to read the signs of times. In the 20th century, we are faced with a situation where negotiating from strength is an outmoded maxim, if it were ever valid. It has always been true, I think, and it is more so today, that the person who can afford to lose face is the strong person, provided he does so of his own free will. I close the quotation. That was Sobukwe speaking. The question which has informed the content of this paper is, what did Sobukwe actually mean by times? It was not the first time that he uses this concept, reading the signs of times. But the context of the letter was the debate between Sobukwe and Benjamin Pogrund about the politics of the United States of America and the implications for the global community. That was the debate. In the US, this was the period of contestation, actually, between two powerful figures, J.F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. A part of the challenge which preoccupied Sobukwe's thinking during this time, and is also intimated in other letters to Benjamin Pogrund, was the quality of leadership and thinking in the liberation movement as a whole, especially how the nationalist liberation movement in South Africa could forge within itself a well-rounded leadership that has moral stature and anticipatory rationale. These are the two issues that preoccupied Sobukwe's thinking during this period. The nationalist liberation movement in South Africa, forging within itself a well-rounded leadership that has moral stature and anticipatory rationale. During this period, we're talking about the late 60s here. During this period in South Africa, apartheid and its Bantustan system were on the ascendancy. And some leaders of the liberation movement were being bought out of the struggle to join homelands, to advance the pedigree of separate development. Sobukwe was deeply concerned by the short-sightedness of some African political leaders. And Sobukwe could sense the direction the US was going and the ultimate impact it was going to have on an independent Africa. That is why the focus of his readings, Sobukwe's library in Robben Island, his reading was more on regional and global issues than on local issues. So when Sobukwe talks about reading the signs of times, he basically underlines very important issues which face us today. The issue is about a political leadership which should care to find a tune in the historical air. A political leadership which should care to find a tune in the historical air. This is about a political leadership which is able to sense and foresee. It's about the structure of feeling, if I were to use the concept of Professor Pickering. The structure of feeling in a given historical period. The structure of feeling is regarded by some scholars of cultural theory as being about what is pre-imagined or imagined as a solution. So reading the signs of times in Sobukwe's letters is about the symbolic and practical role of leadership in sensing and figuring out the futures of the liberation struggles. It is about understanding the meaning and demands of the times. It is not just about the measures of time. Academics in their conferences have, of course, examined and debated issues about the meaning of times, the meaning of epochs, the measures that should be there. I'm reminded of the work by Professor Shiv Viswanathan. In his work is titled The Heuristics of a Dissenting Imagination. That's where he talks about this issue of times and epochs, how important these are. But the point to take home, ladies and gentlemen, a point which Sobukwe subtly makes in his letters, is that the domain of times cannot be unimportant in a politics of emancipation, as the spirals of time and context give leadership substance and foresight. In our case here in South Africa, one could even say that our diplomacy, I'm talking about today, our diplomacy requires a more careful reading of the signs of times. The Westphalian model of national sovereignty is fragile. And this is a lesson we are getting from Trump's invasion of Venezuela. The Westphalian model of national sovereignty is fragile. And this is the lesson we are learning of Venezuela. In the case of South Africa, there is a need for a more nuanced and cautious calculation in our articulations of a principled democracy that we are advancing globally. There is a need on the part of South Africa for a more nuanced, more cautious calculations as we articulate the principled diplomacy we are advancing throughout the globe. And if we don't get to that point, we're going to work ourselves into a corner very soon. Let me bring you just to very quickly to a short letter, another letter by Robert Sobukwe on the 7th of August, 1965, when he writes again to Benjamin Pogrund. And what is important with this letter, I have to qualify it, is that it is this letter which actually irritated the police and apartheid politicians who were keeping an eye on Robert Sobukwe. It irritated them. This letter confirmed to them that Sobukwe could not be persuaded to change his thinking. In this letter, Sobukwe says, I open quotation, I'm not being original when I say that the race problem is to this century what the slave problem was to the last century. And it will be solved because it has to. And to believe that the problem can be accommodated is to be naive. The government cannot but hot up the pace. When the appeal is to emotion, it has to be reduced to the lowest common denominator. For our own self-respect, we who oppose white supremacy have to stand up to the forces representing it. I would rather die on my feet, Benji, than live to 100 crawling on my belly. And that is the only compromise possible. Close the quotation marks. That is Sobukwe's letter. In simple terms, what Sobukwe was saying in this letter was that to die on your feet rather than live long crawling on your belly is perhaps the most honorable compromise one could make to protect whatever remains of one's dignity. This is about sticking to principle. This is about sticking to principle. It holds true even today, as many of our people continue to live crawling on their bellies, as they are afraid of dying for a principle. The image of a black person in agony in a liberated South Africa is shattering. The agony of a black woman in rural areas and townships who have to nurse depressed children sitting at home with university degrees and without jobs is touching. It is touching. There is no fashion of neoliberal politics that can console. There's no fashion of neoliberal politics which can console. Sobukwe's views on these matters were so frank in articulating the pain of African people. They have relevance even today. It is for this reason that you will never hear Sobukwe's voice. It is for this reason that you will never see his footage. It is not that it does not exist. It is there, but it will never be released because some still believe that he can still make black people change their minds. It's a great loss, ladies and gentlemen, that Sobukwe died early. More still needs to be written about the pain he endured throughout his life. The pain he endured as a family man. The pain he endured as a political leader. The humiliation he experienced, sometimes in front of his family, inflicted on him by some Boers who are members of the National Party. His long illness and death in 1978. All these are so painful to remember. His funeral in Graafrenet, under heavy police guard, was a very painful scene. That is why some in poetry raise the question, when shall pain lose its power to evoke in us sadness and tears? When shall pain lose power to be painful? And when shall the vigor of life overcome the painfulness of pain? Of course, these are impossible questions. Not in this world. There is not a point when pain shall not be painful in this world. But there is a point where forever is ever and pain is no more. Greatness, ladies and gentlemen, greatness, before I sit down, greatness in this world is usually measured in proportion to the magnitude of struggles one has confronted. Greatness in this world is perceived in proportion to the extent of the challenge of perseverance in one's life. But there is another level. There is another level. The level much higher than all others. I call it the Sobukwe level, where greatness is measured in proportion to the greatness of personal example. Besides the magnitude of the struggle Sobukwe faced, it is the greatness of his personal example which makes him a cut above others. Sobukwe was incorruptible. Sobukwe was incorruptible. And it's because he struggled with himself first and conquered himself. The major battle facing leadership today is the self. And it is when you win the battle with yourself that your greatness becomes greater than all others. I thank you, Bantwana be Africa.
Wow, a standing ovation, Prof. Thank you so much for the critical reflection and the interpretation of those letters. You've helped us immensely. The provocation and the problematization of today's leadership. As you say, his personal example makes him a cut above others. Thank you so much for the lecture, Prof. It was indeed a lecture, and you have really stimulated us. Without further ado, I am now going to request the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Education to introduce our respondent.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is also my honor this evening to introduce the respondent for this evening's lecture, Prof Zethu Cakata. Prof Zethu Cakata is a South African academic and institutional leader, known for her work in higher education, governance, curriculum transformation, and student development. With a career rooted in both scholarship and leadership, she has contributed meaningfully to debates on access, equity, and academic excellence within South Africa's university system. Her academic journey reflects a deep commitment to education as a vehicle for social change. Trained in the humanities, she built her reputation through research, teaching, and mentorship, earning recognition for fostering critical thinking and inclusive pedagogical practices. Colleagues and students alike describe her as a principled scholar who bridges intellectual rigor with compassion. Prof Zethu currently works as a full professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of South Africa. She has extensive experience in the field of research and has worked as both an academic and a researcher in several institutions, including Statistics South Africa, the Department of Psychology at the University of Pretoria, the Human Science Research Council, the Reproductive Health Research Unit, and the University of the Western Cape. Prof Zethu's scholarship is in the field of African epistemologies and has produced work that advocates for the usage of indigenous languages for epistemic purposes. She has demonstrated this advocacy in publications such as The Place of Indigenous Languages in the New Curriculum, an African psychology case study. Throughout her career, she has participated in national conversations on higher education reform, contributing to panels, advisory structures, and collaborative initiatives aimed at strengthening public universities in South Africa. Her leadership style blends deliberation with decisiveness, grounded in consultation, yet focused on sustainable impact. Her academic effort has earned her the Black Psychologist Scholarship Award in 2019 and the UNISA Scholarship in 2022. Prof Zethu's legacy continues to unfold through the scholars she mentors, the institutional reforms she advances, and her enduring advocacy for a higher education sector that is both globally competitive and locally accountable. Let us welcome Prof Zethu to the podium.
I wish to extend a special greeting to the Vice-Chancellor, Prof Mutwa, to Prof Satora, greetings to the leadership of the PAC and the entire community of the PAC and its relatives, such as Azapo, to the Sobukwe family in its totality, to Prof Kondlo, to the organizers, Ms. Smith, Jackie, and Dr. Jansen. I think we are friends now. After exchanges such numerous emails, there is no ways we are not friends. I would like to greet the audience. I didn't expect such a huge audience. I come from an open distant learning institution. We imagine people. I spent 3 years imagining my student. It was 2 years until graduation, and it turned out actually she was not a dark-skinned girl, short, with a little waist. She was very light in complexion, very tall. So that's how I'm used to working. I imagined Jackie and my friend Dr. Jansen. I wish to also acknowledge my cousin, Professor Sesanta, and he said I should acknowledge his friend, Alan Zin. I would also like to greet the other members of management, all the deans here. I also see Prof Maseko is here. Greetings. Greetings to all the members of extended management and at the council of the university and everybody else who feels like they have a stake. Thank you very much to Prof Kondlo for this address. And greetings to Prof Mueng. I'm so sorry. I'm sure I'm leaving out a lot of people. Please do excuse me. I only wrote about my friends. Thank you. It is a huge honor to stand before you today to respond to Professor Kondlo's address. Even though I cannot say I'm good at responding to people because I was raised by a Xhosa mother. So I'm gonna say whatever I think my mother would approve of. And I would like to start by just reciting Don Matera's poem, Sobukwe, because it helps us, especially the students who do work, postgraduate students who do work on Sobukwe and who are always looking for tools of looking at his work, tools of analyzing his work. And poetry actually is a very useful tool. And Don Matera is telling us something, I feel, about how to treat the memory of Utata Mangaliso Sobukwe. How Prof Kondlo said the example of a person, the greatness of Utata Sobukwe. Don Matera cautions us in this poem about what not to do as well as what to do with memories of sages such as Utata Mangaliso Sobukwe. He says, "It was our suffering, which Prof Kondlo highlighted so well, and our tears that nourished and kept him alive. Their law that killed him." He doesn't say our law, their law that killed him, speaking to the epistemologies of a people, where he's telling us that we should be aware of, especially in academic spaces, of whose knowledge we actually use to do work such as this, focusing on people such as Utata Sobukwe. And Don Matera goes on to say, "Let no dirges be sung, no shrines be raised to burden his memory. Sages such as he need no tombstones to speak their fame. Lay him down on a high mountain, that he may look on the land he loved, the nation for which he died. Men feared the fire of his soul." So I read this poem as a clerical call to us all to take responsibility, to work so that we can confidently claim that we know for sure that from the mountain on which Don Matera implored us to lay him, Sobukwe is looking down on the land he loved and is seeing that we have been ethical to it, ethical to the land, to ensure our continued existence. Because as we know, the PAC stood for land. What could Don Matera be telling us at the birth of this poem? Because it was written in the late 1970s when we lost Utata Sobukwe. The work was published in the early 80s. What do poets stand to impart when we pay careful attention to their words? How does he aid our work, the work that Prof Kondlo was quoting? How should it be influenced by him? What's the direct message about every people having their ways, as I highlighted when he says their law? People have their own ways of perceiving phenomena, of perceiving knowledge, and of conceptualizing knowledge. People have their own philosophies. their way of accessing the ways of knowing themselves, the ways of understanding the land on which they stand, and the way they see how those could work. There are ways of knowing the world, and there are ways of existing in the world. To emphasize in our work, as Don Matera says, what do we need to do to ensure that we are being true to our ways of knowing ourselves? Prof Kondlo spoke about, I noted something, I'm sorry, about slavery and our race, where Sobukwe was speaking of race being a moment similar to that of slavery. To that I would like to say, it is slavery, it is race, it is poverty, it is all of these challenges. To me, it's all one problem, and it has one source. And we all know who the source is. It's the same source responsible for Bab Sobukwe to not be around us today. We can read it separately. It causes no harm, but you can, as long as we still go back to find out what fundamentally is an issue here, because it is the same problem. What I hear Don Matera tells us in this poem is that we need to look at Sobukwe's example, to look at Sobukwe's memory, at his greatness, not with the eyes of the tellers of European history, where they make it a story of adventurous men and men only, who went about discovering people and lands to exploit. I think Don Matera is imploring us to look at this work, to look at the life of Sobukwe, to look at his example, and to tell imbali yetu as we know it ourselves, to tell what is not history but imbali yabantu, because it's not only written by men, it is written by everybody involved, including other elements of life that are not human beings, on which I believe that Sobukwe was fighting for when he was making land demands. Because to us, land is life itself, more than what the epistemology of the West tell us what land is, which is not. I'm gonna skip because I only have 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm just gonna skip some parts of what I wanted to say. But the gist of it is that how can we use, because what we experience in spaces such as academia, we notice that we see a lot of students at postgraduate level wanting to explore people like Steve Biko and Sobukwe's work. And it always makes me sad because it is only at postgraduate level that this happens. And it can make me sad to a point where I cry myself to sleep, because I believe I'm quite an important member of the academic family. So I have some power to do something about it. It will be laughable if I say it makes me feel powerless. I have power to impact the undergraduate level, what goes into the content of what students learn. Because in psychology, as you know, we teach students a lot of concepts that at the end they need to be able to say, this is who I am. And also they need to be able to say to other people, come back to who you are. But who is that which you claim to be? Does that person have anything? But when you page through the curricula, you do not see that. You see that 80% of what is in the content doesn't incorporate how students know themselves, doesn't incorporate who students truly are, especially students that Sobukwe was murdered for, because he didn't die, he didn't give his life, he was murdered. So much of who we are as people Sobukwe fought for centers around self-reliance. We teach students about concepts such as self-efficacy, self-concept, a self-concept, a self-actualization, and none of that actually, it's only outside of class when you get to hear students saying who they truly are. Their self-concept revolves a lot around who they are. How do they access themselves? What gives them strength? What makes them stand? When we say now today that uSobukwe was umfene, uhlati, that is not just a decoration. It is a spiritual claim on the land for which he died. And what we notice is that most of that kind of identity actually reveres nature, reveres indalo, reveres the waters, the ocean, the forest. And it's not just because it sounds good, it's rhythmic. It is, yes, it does, and it sounds good, it sounds poetic, but it serves a purpose as well, a purpose of our spirituality. So before we understand the outside world, before we understand how the globe works, we cannot do that without understanding who we truly are, what makes us the people we are. We cannot talk about land in the epistemology that is not ours, in the epistemology that is not of the very same land, because land understands itself differently. Land, I'm sure it looks at us sometimes and feel how foolish we are, because we truly think through now fields of studies such as climate change, environmental, and all of those, we truly feel like we are in control. We can make things happen to help the land, yet we are the people who need help from the land. Land is powerful. Land is our greatest ancestor. And ever since we stopped looking at land in such a lens, we suffered. I worked for Statistics South Africa, and we did a lot of surveys, national surveys, and they all paint a gloomy picture, not about other people, but about the people for whom Sobukwe was murdered. A gloomy picture about mortality stats, a gloomy picture about household surveys, because we have a definition of land that extracts from land, that takes from land, and pretends as if it's helping the land, so that it doesn't rest, but it allows us to take some more. And the results of that is all the destruction that we see right in front of us, all the deaths, all the short span of life, and everything that we see, the poverty, because we stopped looking at land with our spiritual eye. We stopped remembering that Amamfene ngohlati ngolisa, the children of the forest, how we treat the forest has everything to do with how we live, not how we survive. So we need to be ethical. I said most of who we are revolves around our self-reliance. And self-reliance is because it has self. It's just not a narrow concept about an individual. Actually, we learn that self-reliance is to rely to everybody around you. as well as the other elements of life, such as the water, the galaxies, the land that produces our food. And and also, as you rely on those, you also keep to your end of the stick by ensuring that you are ethical to their efforts. They also do rely upon you. You play your part. So we live in an ethical arrangement with life around us. So these are the things that we did not forget when we draft our curriculum. These are the ways of knowing that our students deserve to learn about, so that there should be congruence between what we teach and how students live their lives outside. Because what is happening now, it doesn't really say that we are a nation with an education. So I believe that the kind of struggle people like Sobukwe, people like Steve Biko put up, they were putting up for us to open our eyes, like Don Matera says, to open our eyes to understand that there are numerous ways of knowing things. There isn't a universal compass where we all follow, and most of the time it only works for its people. Because somebody, when I was doing my doctorate, one of the participants once said, look around the world, there is no nation that is successful economically that uses another person's language. So, and what that means is that language carries more than communication tools. It carries the ways of life of a people. So I believe that it is important to remember the greatness of people like Sobukwe, and to remember that by being true to ourselves, by being true to the way in which we know ourselves, the way in which we know the land, and the way in which the land knows itself and knows us. Because we know the land as the greatest ancestor. We believe that we call it Ipagade, something that never dies. So we believe it's something that will never perish, no matter how bad we treat us. I always say it gets rid of us and recreates itself. So it is doing us a favor, actually, by trying to understand our legacies, to try to understand legacies from different perspectives, and not a set perspective where it doesn't lead us to solutions. I think in closing, I would just like to say, I believe that Sobukwe would love for us actually to make his memory more than something, to make his memory active by doing something. If we say we have read about his life, it must feature in the work we produce, in the work that we do. For those of us who still teach students and who believe in teaching students, it must actually feature in how we train our students to be themselves, not to be the version of others, a version that is unattainable, a version that only is reflected in T-shirts, but not in the substance in which they carry. And it would be our fault if our students do not have the substance that reflects that they come from universities that have gatherings like this, gatherings that honor the greatness of people like Utatu Sobukwe. Gatherings, we cannot have a psychology where we just mention and cry about how our leaders were murdered. We need a curriculum, a university that reflects truly what the greatness of Sobukwe truly means in ways we teach, and how students would actually practice what we teach in their communities as teachers, as psychologists, as doctors, as everything they want to be, even if they don't want to be part of those professions, as people who truly reflects the land, who understands the land from the perspective of an African person, an African person that Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe was. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Cakata, for that response, honoring the memory of Sobukwe. Land is life itself. It is powerful. It is our ancestor. How we live and not how we survive. And a call at the end for us to do something in memory of Sobukwe, not just through wearing T-shirts, but something meaningful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, Prof. It is time for question and answer. I am going to take a set of 3 hands, and then I will determine how long the responses are, whether we're going to have another round. So we might only have 1 round. And please, I am urging that you do not make a speech before your question. Speeches, because I say so, I'm a teacher by profession. Because the speeches have been made. So, ladies and gentlemen, the audience is now being asked to ask questions. I see 1, 2. Is that no 3 and 3? Okay. In that order, there's a microphone. And then please state to whom you are addressing your question. You might be addressing to both speakers as well. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. My name is Sisaya Kwamtembo. I'm a student. I'm an economics student here at Nelson Mandela University. But this question is actually directed to anyone. Even the VC of the university can answer this question. Yeah. It goes, Sobukwe was deliberately isolated because he was considered too dangerous because he could think. In our current education system, are we actually producing graduates who can critically think, or are we producing job seekers? What is the university's role in creating dangerous thinkers? Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mpone Mutsivadi, a postgraduate in our institution. So my question is to Prof Kondlo. You mentioned something like, if I can just say it loosely, supremacist ideas are refusing the global democratization, right? So my question is, why do you think the legacy of Sobukwe intimidate some in our society? I mean, he didn't advocate for the murder of anyone. He didn't advocate for infringement of anyone's rights. The second question is for Prof Cakata. You mentioned that PAC stand for land, right? So my question is, do you think they are still on that path? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question.
Greetings everyone. And I want to
all right, colleagues. Thank you.
as we all know, one of Mutata Sobukwe's quote was, "The land is ours," which later became Ms. Logan for PAC for the longest time. So my question is to the panel, what are some of the strategic ways is the society at the moment and the leadership planning to address aggressively the issue of the land? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Prof, you've got the microphone with you. Okay, so are you going to? The first question is around how universities can produce graduates who can think critically and not dangerously. All right, thank you.
It's a very important one, actually. It's a very important one. I take it very seriously. In the committees where I sit at University of Witwatersrand, we do raise issues like you are raising. But the challenge is always, how do we get this thing implemented? Good ideas do come up when we meet as committees, but the issue is, how do we get these things implemented? Because you know, with university, the process can actually go as far as 3 years before you get something changed, you see, and introduce something new. But I think it's an issue that we need to flag so that the entire university community comes up with a set of suggestions. Yeah. Because fortunately, we have very good humane leadership at many of our institutions. Yes. But the problem is that we cannot always go asking for solutions, raising questions and asking for solutions. It's important that we also contribute. We put suggestions, we table them, and we listen to the processes that can be followed to address those issues.
All right, thank you so much, Prof, for that. And then we had a question for you, Prof Cakata.
That's a cruel question. I think being kind to ourselves is also a political strategy. Being kind to our journey. I mean, liberation is a journey, and along the way, it gets impacted by a lot of things. And right now, I think we have, as we can see, we have a political space that is largely monetarized. So it becomes very, very difficult for people who are advocating for things that are against the status quo to thrive. So it's easy for us to accuse them of veering away from the path, and most of the time that is not always true. And maybe you asking, so what is the solution? I do not have, but what I would like to say is that we don't need permission to actually turn our backs from things that do not serve us. There is no way that we can be, people like me, can form part of each and every negative statistics. There is no way. At some point, we need to say the joke is on us. And what can we do to turn ourselves from the system that never had an intention to serve us, that never is not even, it doesn't even conceal that fact. It's out there. And we know, we've always known, long before the 60s, long before the 1920s, in the 1800s already, we know we were operating in a system that is not about us. at all. It was not designed to serve us. When people design an education system, they are designing it with their children in mind, with themselves in mind. And that's what I was saying. It will be really short-sighted of us to think that we can make that education all of a sudden work for us, because it was never designed for us. That's what Don Matero says, it is theirs. Thank you.
And the response to the last question? You forgot, ne?
About land is ours. Is it that one about land is ours? And indeed, it is ours. And I'm a rural girl, so I come from the villages, Eklesi, Edebe. And we need to practice, or we belong to the land, maybe it doesn't belong to us, we belong to it, and it knows us. And we need to practice whatever piece of land we have, we need to show that we belong to this thing. It truly knows us. Too. It is, maybe you're right, it is ours. We need to, no one is gonna give it to us. We must have it in the way that we've always had it. We must have it, and knowing that you need land is by using it. And realizing that, no, it's not enough, I'm not getting enough food from this patch and patch of land. How do I get enough for me to survive? And remember, we don't belong to land in the way the West does, because we don't see it as something that should give us these, like we put value on the stones the land produce. They put value, we don't even know how they arrive at the fact that gold and diamonds their value should be this much. We don't know that, is it that valuable in monetary terms, or was it meant to serve other purposes? So I'm trying to say that we need to look at the land with our own eyes. What are those things there for in the true sense, and work around that? How do we need it? How can it serve us? How can it host us? Does it need to be monetarized? Because our education revolves around a capitalist system, and that what triple us. And for us, land exists for spiritual purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Two last questions. That one was up last time, so I will take that one. And because you are relentless at the back, and that one. And those will be. Yeah. And umntana esikolo ugqibela ke. All right, Inzolo.
Good evening. Igama nguSnawo Khubeni. I am a PhD candidate. I think one thing that stands out for me regarding Mr. Sobukwe was his love for education. I picked something up when I was researching about him. It's written, it says, when Sobukwe left Helltown Mission Institute for the next stage of his education, he found that most of the country's universities were closed to blacks. Only the universities of Cape Town and the Witwatersrand gave limited access to black students. My first question is, if Sobukwe confronted a higher education that was formerly closed to black students, how do we understand a post-apartheid higher education system where access is technically open, but materially inaccessible to many? Have the barriers changed form without changing function? Number two, if there is this thing, like every academic year we know there will be student protests. My second question is on that. It's actually, if the liberation struggle was about dismantling unjust systems, who bears responsibility when the same structural exclusions produce recurring protest cycles in democratic South Africa? If the same thing is so predictable yearly, is it
Okay, all right. Thank you, we've got that. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Molweni, my name is Shamulos Linda. I'm a fifth year medical student here at NMU. So my question goes to both profs. Prof Kondlo mentioned that one of the quotes that he made is that Robert Sobukwe mentioned that we need to understand the meaning and the demands of time. And it's just a follow-up question to Grootman there about the land. I want to ask, does our current political system, is it the right vehicle to the total revelation that we're talking about? Because when it comes to the land question, for example, most of the time when we go to campus at Mission Vale, when you pass Mission Vale and you compare it to 2nd Avenue, people are living close to one another. They don't even have a space to breathe in. But when you get to 2nd Avenue, which is like a 15-minute drive, there's a park where kids can go and play. And going back to what Prof said about we need to be intentional about the land. Yes, we do want to be intentional, but it's not available. How do we go about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Okay. Hello to everybody. My name is Likon.
All right, thank you, thank you.
As I said, that's hello to everybody again. And it is my first time to be here. It is my first time to be in front of all of you guys. And it's like I feel fear and I'm very scared so much. I'm from the school that calls UNISA High School. And I'm grateful to be here. And I'm grateful to be with everyone who's here today.
All right.
As I'm standing here, I'm not standing just as a student or as a learner. I'm standing here as a leader.
Okay, can I just ask that, don't clap, let him just finish his question. All right, thank you so much.
Before I go to this question, as I continue, my purpose is that for today, everyone who's here to learn what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say in front of you all of guys. And what I want to know is that I love you all, and you are always in my heart. So, Here is a question, ma'am. And this question is not based on what you said on everything, but it is from my own elaboration. It is something that is very important to everyone, as a South African, as a female, or as a male, to learn or to hear about this, what I'm going to say today. And may you keep what I'm going to say, and may you learn from what I'm going to say. Because this is not just confidence, but this is a trust. Because I believe in myself. Let me go to this question right now.
Yes, please.
Okay. Here I go with this question from Tata Robert Sokube. I've learned everything, I've heard everything about his life, where he was born, Europe, and everything that is here. So the very important question is that as a currently generation and as a currently student and people who are from South Africa, what can we learn from his doings? What can we take or gain from his works? Because when I hear he was like in apartheid times, he was a person who likes to contribute. He was a person who likes to give himself, he will give himself. So the question is that, ma'am, if the generation that is coming, what can they gain from this information? Do you think in the generation that is coming, can they succeed or can they gain about the lives of Sobukwe, and what can they provide or what can they share? I want you all to know that, guys, this is not just a word, but this is a day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've got the Budi Dijonge. We've got the essence of your question. Thank you so much. All right. Prof, are you going? I'll remind you. So the first question is, how do we understand higher education that is technically open but materially not accessible to the majority? And then the second question feeds into that. Let me just take Kusinawa's questions. Structural exclusion, reproducing, disruption in the beginning of the year, and all of the protests that we see in the beginning of the year because of the structural exclusion and the inaccessibility of higher education.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we perhaps need to talk about and debate is the way how we as parents advise and orientate our children. Because I also grew up in a family where going to university was the great and only thing. No one ever talked about technicons when I was growing up. We were all directed to the university. You finish your matric, you go to university. Not to a technical college. There were technical colleges those days, you see. So I think it's something which, as society, as communities, we need to engage amongst ourselves. Some of the problems, we create them. Some of the problems, we generate them. And then we ask for solutions from somebody else. So these are the issues, really, I think we just need to handle. Yes, I must emphasize, when it comes to structural injustices, we must understand that there is deeper, serious issues of political economy that are confronting us. We negotiated a very fragile national liberation. Our liberation is a truncated one. That is why you find that a lot of things which we should have attended in 1994, we've not attended to them up till now, you see. The focus of leadership has been on peripheral issues. And it's only now that some are getting up to see that we've actually betrayed the people we thought we were liberating. Thanks.
Thank you. And I would like to thank my leader up there. You made my evening. You are my entire Gqeberha experience. And to add to what Prof Kondlo has just said about structural inequalities, I would just like to say that by design, the capitalist system does that. It's like a pyramid where the very few are at the top. Even in its own home, the Western world, you find that. It's just that they don't show the bottom on TV. And to their people, they show our very bottom on their TVs. So we don't get to see. So we inherited an economic system that is just not capable of having everyone at the top. It's not designed to do that. And we must ask ourselves, so why do we still have it? Why do we still have a system that is not designed to work for everybody? Today we have more graduates than we've ever had because more and more of our children can come to university, get NSS, and graduate, but they're not getting employment. Yet we were raised to say, come to university, and that's how we raised our children. Now we have adult children in their 20s up to 30s who have never even been called to an interview. So what is the problem? The problem is the system, the economic system. It's not designed to have all of us there. Medicine and psychology will tell you, at undergraduate, there's a lot of you in class, but at an honors level of a psychology class, there's only 60 of you. At a master's class, in our class, we were only 5. What happens to the 55? And what happened to the hundreds that were at our undergrad class? So it is the system, and yet we keep on nourishing it, speaking as if we can reform it and make it work for us. It's been how many years? Most of us are older than Steve Biko when he passed, yet we're still speaking about the same issues.
Thank you. All right, and then the third question around, is our current political system the right vehicle to attain the land? Izwe lethu. You okay?
Our current political system, I would say yes and no. The yes is based on the fact that I actually wish that Mr. Nyonso was here. He was supposed to come, but got busy in the National Assembly. He's the Minister of Land Affairs. The reason why I say yes is because I used to be in that department myself as a special policy advisor to the Director General. There are lots of policies, especially policies on land acquisition for redistribution. They are there. Yeah. Don't ask me whether they've been implemented. I don't know. Or the extent and the speed of implementation. I also don't know. And secondly, our constitution is not bad. Section 25 of this constitution does talk about land reform. You see. Yes, I would agree with you if you say the constitution, the problem of the constitution is that what it gives you on the right hand, it takes on the left hand. That is the reason why I agree with people who say we need to have serious constitutional talks again. You see. Because that has slowed land reform, despite the good policies we have on paper. But on the other side, let me say it. We do have people who have benefited from land restitution, received pieces of farms, small holdings, and what happens? Within 2 years, these people, it's either they rent to the Afrikaners the same land, or they sell it back. You see. That is a big challenge. We get this land, we don't know how to utilize it, and eventually we sell it back. But that weakness talks to the weakness of government. You can't give our people land without support. You see. So there is a need really to design serious, sustainable support programs for land reform beneficiaries. Black people can farm, and black people can be productive users of the land. It's not true that black people can't use the land. They can use the land.
Thank you, Prof. And for the final question from the young leader, what can we learn from Robert Sobukwe's works?
We can learn to stand up like you did.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This brings us to the end of the question and answer session that we have. And now I'm going to request Professor Pillay to come forward so that we can thank our speakers. Are you going to, yeah? You're going to give it to Prof? Yeah, Prof? And then this one? No, thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to call on Mr. Jackie Siroke. Stone, okay, for the vote of thanks. Over to you.
Izoletu, Africa. Mine is straightforward. Let me hasten to say big gratitude to the following. We would like to thank the keynote speaker, Professor Kondlo, and the respondent, Professor Cakata. We'd like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Sibongile Mutwa, the NMU Council and its institutional management. We'd like to thank the DVC Learning and Teaching and Program Director, Dr. Muki Mueng. We'd like to thank Mr. Alan Zinn, Institutional Coordinator for the Institutional Public Lectures. We'd like to thank the Faculty of Education as the hosts, the Mandela University South Campus Library for their exhibition, Mandela Press for their support and exhibition, the Future Teachers Choir from the Faculty of Education. I'd like to thank PASMA, the student organization from Mandela University, is Zwelethhu. We'd like to thank the PR and AV teams, the NMU Campus Events Office, the student marshals and assistants. We'd also like to thank the event planning and logistics team. It would be remiss for me not to explain that the PAC president, whom I deputize, is on public duty. As it has been said, he would have loved to be here, but he also had to go and hold and do international duty this time in Colombia, where an international conference on land reform and rural development is being held. He addressed the conference and hopefully will come and give us an international perspective on this issue of land reform. I want to conclude by also responding to Professor Kondlo, who said that he went to Graaff-Reinet at the time to pay a visit to the Sobukwe family. And he also referred to Sobukwe as the son of man. First, because Sobukwe had a great following among people in the liberation movement. Indeed, they called him the son of man. That's because he was an ordinary person who did extraordinary things. Sobukwe managed to speak to the soul of African people. His power and influence was such that John Balthazar Foster, a leader of the National Party at the time, said Sobukwe had a natural dignity. He had a magic presence that made him to do, or that made people to do what he said they must do. He was a powerful organizer, and he was able to be among people, and his presence would be felt by everyone. So the issue of a son of man is not blasphemy or a comparison with Jesus Christ. It's a term, rather, of endearment by the people who have met with him, because such characters, they say, come only once in 100 years. And I think for us, the Azanian people, we're very fortunate to have had a person like Sobukwe. Now, for me, as a follower of Sobukwe and a member of the PAC, it was important for me to learn and study this other side of Sobukwe that I felt was not very clear. And to learn that, I went to speak to members of the family to get their perspective on their husband, their father, their uncle, from a human perspective. And here are the stories. Sobukwe had twin sons. The one surviving son at the time when I went to speak to them was the Dani. Now, the Dani was a naughty youngster, or he had mischiefs like little boys would often have. And he told me that in Kimberley, when they were in the presence of their father, the twins, they would be working on the garden, but on the side, sharing cigarettes, which they were not allowed to do because they were still under 14 or so. And they would speak in the local language. He called this Tramto, to say, hey, nailem vanvane yeza man, hey, shayales, fitalento, meaning to the uninitiated. Here's this guy coming, who is not so wise, coming to suppress us. Hide the cigarette. So you see, this is, Sobukwe was an ordinary man like any father would have. That's how I understood it. I spoke to Sobukwe. Basically, that was my target. Oh, before I come to him, let me end with her. I spoke to Dini. Dini was is the second after Mangaliso. And Dini in the family was, especially among the siblings, was the most intellectual among them, according to the family members. He did very well at school, especially at high school. He got good grades. So they thought he would be the one running the Sobukwe Trust. Dini, when I asked him, let's hear it, what's the impression, lasting impression your father made on you? And he said two things. First, my father would get very angry with me, I'm quoting him, if I made Mangaliso angry or Mangaliso upset. No, my father would be stern and would really reprimand me for doing that, because my father respected women. He respected the young girl, and he felt they must be properly protected. The second thing that he said is that the image he has of his father when he's on his own is Sobukwe praying every day, every night, bringing the family together in prayer during that time, particularly when they were in Kimberley. And the prayer was not only for the family, it was a prayer for the whole nation to overcome its hardships, to overcome oppression, to overcome against the dark forces. And Sobukwe was not sectarian. He would pray, he was in Kimberley, he would pray for the more than 1,000 political prisoners who were on Robben Island and mention them by name, that they survived the hardships of prison. He mentioned them all, and I think you'll be surprised if you don't know this, but he'd also pray for Nelson Mandela and others who are not necessarily in the PAC, and mention them by name, that let us sibambe with faith, because we are on the right course, and in the end we shall overcome. That is what Dini told me as the impression he had of his father. You will notice that there's a picture taken by Mike Nzileni of Sobukwe having his hand in prayer like this. And Dini said, that's my favorite picture. Lastly, you know, it was always difficult for a young person to talk to elderlies. In our community, we know how difficult it is. So my colleagues and friends and comrades said, you will never crack Sobukwe. She doesn't speak about her husband. And she doesn't want frivolous things said around her. She's a stern woman, takes no nonsense from anyone. And I was told this by some of my elders, like journalists like Joe Kroll and others, said, you'll never do that. But surprisingly, she spoke to me like a friend. We sat under the tree. I would find her in the morning sweeping the yard. She was an ordinary woman like everybody else. And she spoke, looking me in the eye, and said, Umyeni wam, as if Sobukwe was around the corner. And this was in the like 2015, around that time. And said, Umyeni wami used to warn me and say, hey, Zodwa, don't don't tell people how good I am to you. Bazangundithatha kaloku. So just say a little or say kancinci. Don't say too much praising me. And she would go into narrative stories like that. But what I would understand is that they deeply loved each other. And that story, that love story, is a story South Africa doesn't understand. It's a story that we never really to understand because at the end of it all, we are talking about the human condition. And people who go through these hardships, what keeps them together at the personal level? And I'm happy that Professor Kondlo was making the point that it is important to find how we internally can interrogate ourselves and say, would we have been like Sobukwe to withstand all the forces against us? And I believe that this is an inspiring story that should keep us all. I'm at the end of it, ladies and gentlemen. The issues that were asked about the PAC, I cannot answer them now. We'll answer them at the right platform, especially the ones raised by the student. But what I want to say is we, in the PAC, we would like to be like Sobukwe. We would like to walk like him, smile like him, think like him, and be more strategic. We've never sat down with Sobukwe, so it is the Sobukwe that we imagine ourselves to be. So that imagination of Sobukwe will never die. We'll take it from one generation to the next generation, and Sobukwe will live forever. In that sense, I'd really would like to thank you, like to thank the university. Thank you for hosting us and continuing with this biennial memorial lecture. And say, please keep it up, because Sobukwe lives forever. Izoletu. Africa.
Now I'm thanking the vote of thanks. Thank you so much for the vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, there's refreshments in the foyer. Please make yourself comfortable. Drive safely and have a wonderful evening further. Thank you.